the session. I forget which episode number we're on now.
Hey there.
And
Actually, check.
You want something?
just doing some equipment updating. I don't really need to check, do we?
This should be part 37.
Okay then. We do some equipment shopping.
This is the one advantage of doing post-commentary. You can check while the game still keeps playing.
Alright, and man, there wasn't that much that we could really get here. There was an actual, well, okay. That was a fairly substantial upgrade, I think, but most of it was just not that much of a, not that great of an option. Because it came with some seriously nasty penalties. Let's see. Oh yeah, claws. You can now buy claws. Yeah, that's a mess. A fairly big drop in photon points there, which is not a great option.
Well, there were similar.
Oh right, because we were looking at the daggers. Never mind.
There were similar situations in Dragon Quest VIII, like when we got to what was that place called?
Thanks.
I think we just
The Ice Town.
Oh yeah, up there. Orkutsk.
Orkutsk, yeah. When we got there, there was an item that gave Angelo, 5 more defense, a piece of armor. But we decided that it wasn't worth it because the previous armor he had was 7 points less of defense or something. But it had an increase of evasion chance.
Right. Well, and the other piece of armor it was just 5 to 7 points better with no added effects.
Mm-hmm.
And typically, unless you typically almost always want an item with added effects over something that's, only better numerically.
If it was 25 or more, then maybe, but...
Yeah, then maybe. But it's about meaningful choices in the game. It's not much of a choice if you only have equipment that is strictly better. But when you have, you don't need... Here we go, we just need glue. But if you have equipment that favors your evasion stat over your armor, and then some equipment that favors your armor over your evasion, then there's an actual, choice there. Which is, actually, now that I think about it, another topic of an extra credits episode. I don't remember which particular episode that was.
I don't think there was too... Momo in Breath of Fire 3, her flame and ice crystals were 20 less attack, but they actually did more damage.
Because they have the elemental properties. You're picking between elemental properties here.
I'm not sure if Arc Lab did too much of that, because I was...
Kind of. It was different. The different weapon parts would provide different statistics, and actually, Arc the Lab provides a really good example of how to do that. In that, the unique equipment bits you could steal from enemies that enemies would drop, like Karg's Burst Blade. It's not a straight-up attack upgrade, but it does modify his offensive ability in ways that a single amethyst coating won't, because it means his attacks will reach a wider area.
In that game,
he can damage more enemies at a time.
In that game, I particularly liked having at least 2 diamond coatings in everybody, because I favored more attack damage than...
Right. But, or Maru's Silk Bowstring, which traded his long range for a wider burst.
Mm-hmm. A really wider.
Yeah. Interesting things like that. That's how you create really interesting choices in video games. And now we've got... Right. apparently Dr. Right, Buddhist temple. So that's, like, the fact that that's an actual concept in the Phantasy Star universe, like, that's really weird to me. Like, okay, first, and for another thing, Buddhist should have been capitalized there. Proper nouns and all. But, like, so whatever this, like, what are the implications there? Is whatever this religion that worships the holy light, is that Buddhism? Which actually would be wrong if I'm correct in my understanding of Buddhism. Or is it like not the only religion in the Graal system? Is there like an entire sect of people who practice Buddhism as we know it? And that just raises further questions. Which sect of Buddhism? Is it Tibetan, or is it the Zen Buddhism? Things like that. Like you try to include this little. You try to include this little detail, and it only raises more questions. It's another combat section. I'm just gonna kind of move through here. Actually, though, this does remind me. We have an actual like concept to talk about. Oh well, dude. Like we have plenty to talk about during the non-combat mission sections of the game. Let's be honest with ourselves here. We tend to be pretty sparse when it comes to as we get later and later in the fighting.
Well, at least not yet, but we're certainly not going as hot as we did Rapid Quest 8.
Yeah. Well, I mean, repetition.
I mean, in our that's what despair is. We were always talking.
Yeah, I'm just not sure what the change was. Anyway,
because they're both RPGs.
Well, they're mechanically quite different. But anyway, this actually reminds me of, well, some of you may remember several episodes ago I was talking about how I wasn't impressed with the combat design in this game because basically the only differences between monsters were, like, their stats. The later you get into the game, the more the monsters just become bigger and bigger collections of numbers. And if you want to actually find out more about that, there's, I am freely going to admit, I am a huge nerd for this YouTube series called Extra Credits. Probably heard of it. There's probably much more of you that have actually heard of it than you've heard of us. There's an episode they do called Differences in Kind, which basically covers exactly the topic I'm talking about here. Where you create challenge and interest in the game by changing what exactly the player is doing. And this can be as big as just, like, well, there's a few good examples here in Phantasy Star, like, the vehicle section we did early on, or more recently the, whatever those were called, the chocobo graphs.
Lucas.
Right, those things. Like, that is a difference in kind. It breaks up the gameplay, gives the player something new to do, and gets their interest. Whereas combat, on the other hand, pretty much only has a difference in scale. It just keeps going up and up and up. there's not really a difference in how you fight enemies. With a few exceptions, like the Stateria are a very different beast from basically anything else you fight in the game. Because they have completely different tactics and abilities. Which is kind of what makes them fun to fight, despite the fact that they're brutal. Especially when you first encounter them.
I think it would have been nice if they actually made the AIs do what they say.
Well, yeah, that would probably help. But yeah, as it is, like, Stateria are basically the only enemies that really require a complete difference in how you fight them because of their shields and their different capabilities. Everything else is just basically, you know, spam the crap out of your abilities. Even a hack and slash game like Devil May Cry can really create some very compelling differences in kind, because you fight very different enemies. The basic enemies you fight at the start of the game are going to be very different from some of the ones you get introduced to later. And you'll still see those enemies pop up. And they'll be adjusted from the point in the game that you're at least a little bit. I don't know how much adjustment Devil May Cry does. I know that they upgrade some of those enemies into stronger forms. But here's the thing, when they upgrade those enemies, they also give them new capabilities to make them feel very different. They'll fight in a similar way, so that you're vaguely familiar with what they're going to do, but then they'll have different tactics that will throw you completely for a loop. And it's amazing. It creates such a fun difference in the gameplay. It really makes you get involved with what you're doing. We continue to slice our way through hordes of enemies.
I just realized something when I recently defeated Pete on my third watch of Kingdom Hearts. But one thing I always notice is, let's say I did an hour's worth of recording from 5 to 6 p.m. If I watched that recording like 10 minutes later, I feel like I did it a month ago.
That's kind of funny, actually. I'm not sure what it... Ah, yes, MST +3. Unfortunately, the joke I made at the time we actually got this would not be nearly so entertaining now. Basically, all I'm going to say to you guys is keep circulating the tapes and watch out for snakes.
Or like a game over. For example, the Pete battle. I watched it afterward, like 5 minutes later, and it felt so different.
Yeah, and I think it's partly because your perception of time changes as you adapt to the flow of the game. Well, like...
Or like when I was versus when I was fighting it from when I'm watching it, I noticed more moves that I did or stuff like that.
Right.
Whereas when I was fighting it, it's like it wasn't there.
Yeah, like, well, that's part of this concept of flow. I actually read, there was an actual, like, article that I had to study for a psych class that talked about this. I don't remember unfortunately, this was, like, last year, so I don't remember it too well.
Like, I keep watching...
Okay. But like, well, okay, like, you'll have those moments in a game where... Well, actually, let me just ask you this. Let me open up this discussion. Have you ever been, like, so into the video game that it's like the controller just disappears? You're not even thinking about the controls or anything like that. You're just doing it in the game.
No. I can always feel the control in there.
Well, I mean, not exactly literally, but like, it feels like you feel really connected to the events going on screen. You're oh, hey, yeah, escape doll. You're in the game mentally. Like, have you ever had a moment like that where it just feels like you're flying with the game? You don't have to think consciously too much about what you're doing, and you just relax and you let go.
I guess, sort of.
Yeah, that's flow. That feeling you get when everything in the game just sort of clicks and you move through it. You know, like you're swimming through water.
Or another perfect example from my peak battle on my second walkthrough back on December 31st last year. Donald got knocked into low health and then later got knocked out. And watching the game, it made me realize that I don't remember that happening when I was playing it.
Yeah, that's because you were into the game. That's because you were getting really into it.
With this latest one, I did, but
you were feeling the flow of the game, and this is something you can observe in pretty much any game, any kind of game. I mean, this one, admittedly, for me, is a bit harder just because of how repetitive the game is.
Well, like at that same moment when Donald got hit to low health, Goofy was using Goofy Turbo, but I didn't realize that when I was playing the game.
Right. We've covered stuff. We've covered how it feels, but like it can flow can occur in a lot of different places. Oh, and we're almost out of time for this particular segment, so I'll save the discussion of where flow comes in until the next segment. But
basically, I'll end it with, "Wow, I can't believe it's done already."
Yeah, like, well, you know, time flies when you're having fun, right?
No, I mean like the Pete battle, like it feels like you just started and then you finished it, but on the video it's like 4 minutes.
Yeah. I think that's more to do with the fact that you have played it so much that it just kind of flies by you.
Alright, so we're gonna stop here so we don't get cut off, and